Okay, hello. Today we'll talk about a very interesting subject, and I will do so. I will talk about atmospheric architecture by the way of the birthday of a very important British painter, William Turner. Uh, what is the relationship between atmospheric architecture and his paintings? Well, it's not very complicated. His paintings, and I will show a number of his works, is very atmospheric in painting. And by the way of that, I thought of addressing this subject, which to me is very interesting, atmospheric architecture. I like this image, and I used it on the invitation. This is actually an image from a great film by a great Russian film director, Andrei Tarkovsky. The name of the film is and was The Stalker. And Tarkovsky was considered by many is considered one of the most important film directors ever. In fact, Ingmar Bergman thought that he was the best ever. But, you know, hierarchies in art are not really easy to establish, and perhaps it's not even necessary. Anyway, a great film. If you didn't see it, I suggest to you to see it. The Stalker, Andrei Tarkovsky. This atmospheric architecture is, in a way, an architecture of evanescence, almost like a disappearing architecture. And the atmosphere is something both kind of explicit what it is, and on the other hand, rather mysterious. So I hope by the end of the presentation, we'll kind of understand what this word might mean. But this presentation, as I said, is an homage to William Turner, truly a great, great painter. And I hope you'll agree with me after you see some images with his paintings. His name is actually longer, Joseph Mallord William Turner. The problem is there is another William Turner who lived a little earlier than him. So that's why it's a little bit difficult. Easier it would be to just say William Turner. The problem is there is another painter with the very same name. So now on Wikipedia, for example, you see these initials and then Turner. But I think it will work if we just say William Turner. And because he is truly the remarkable artist. The other one, in my opinion, less so. This was the man. And we'll read about him a little bit. As you can see from the way he was dressed, that he didn't belong to our time at all. But his painting is formidably modern. A very interesting man, and I will read a few things about him. So William Turner, Joseph Mallord William Turner, as you see, born on the 23rd of April, 1775. That is 247 years ago, if I add it correctly. So 247 years ago, known in his time as William Turner, was an English romantic painter, printmaker, and watercolorist. He is known for his expressive colorizations, imaginative landscapes, and turbulent, often violent marine paintings. He left behind more than 550 oil paintings, 2,000 watercolors, and 30,000 works on paper. He was championed by the leading English art critic John Ruskin from 1840, and is today regarded as having elevated landscape painting to an eminence rivaling history painting. Not a little thing. So again, we should remember William Turner, born on April 23rd, 1775. Turner was born in Maiden Lane, Covent Garden in London to a modest lower middle class family. He lived in London all his life, retaining his Cockney accent and assiduously avoiding the trappings of success and fame. This is very interesting. Perhaps we should read again, because most of us, we would do anything for success and fame. While this man, who was truly a major artist, he tried to avoid success and fame. Maybe he knew what Leonardo da Vinci said when he talked about the flames, the tongues of fame. Indeed, success and fame could be trappings. And I'm glad to hear that Turner didn't allow these trappings to affect him. But he was a unique man in many ways. So let's read. A child prodigy, Turner studied at the Royal Academy of Arts from 1789, enrolling when he was 14 and exhibited his first work there at 15. During this period, he also served as an architectural draftsman. He earned a steady income from commissions and sales, which, due to his troubled, contrary nature, were often begrudgingly accepted. I looked in the dictionary what begrudgingly means, and means he often reluctantly accepted. So he had difficulties to accept, commissions and money even for the sales of his work. Strange, no? Because most of us would love to receive money, wouldn't we? But money is a trapping itself, and we can talk countless hours about this. He opened his own gallery in 1804 and became professor of perspective at the Academy in 1807. This is also very interesting because his work has nothing to do with perspective. In a way, it's the very opposite of perspective, and you'll understand immediately while you'll see a few of his paintings. So he lectured at that school until 1828. He traveled to Europe from 1802, typically returning with voluminous sketchbooks. Intensely private, eccentric, and reclusive, Turner was a controversial figure throughout his career. He did not marry, but fathered two daughters, Evelyn and Georgiana, by his housekeeper, Sarah Danby. He became more pessimistic and morose as he got older, especially after the death of his father. When his outlook deteriorated, his gallery fell into disrepair and neglect, and his art intensified. I like this. On one hand, he was deteriorating, and his gallery was deteriorating, but his art intensified. So, he tried to take revenge on the less fortunate side of his life through art. And in many ways, very often artists do exactly this. In 1841, Turner rowed a boat into the Thames, so he could not be counted as present at any property in that year's census. Strange. He lived in squalor and poor health from 1845 and died in London in 1851, aged 76. Turner, though, I added that though, is buried in St. Paul's Cathedral, London, the most important, the most famous cathedral in London. This again says a lot. Now let's look at his works. The ship is recognizable, but the drama of the sky and water, less so. If you make abstraction, in a way, that the drama of nature overtakes everything, and the little ship is just lost. Maybe that little ship was his own soul. It's possible, but the paintings. Look at this. This is a modern painting. It's almost abstract. You see, you barely see a silhouette of a ship, but otherwise the violence of the turmoil of the water, the tempest, the sky, the water, they unite. I think they are incredible, these paintings, considering, that they were done more than 200 years ago. I think this is the painting that Ioana Dumitrescu, who was here yesterday, talked about, because I do see the train. But you know, the train or the ship and so on, they are really accidental and circumstantial, because what truly counts is everything around. And indeed, his paintings are atmospheric. It's this atmosphere, you know, it's not the little object that is trained, well, not so little in reality, but in the painting it is, either a ship or a painting. But the atmosphere around it is tumultuous, and that's what counts in his paintings. Now, do we see here the teacher of perspective? Not really, you know, I mean, you know, you do see it in the works of Piero della Francesca, who was one of the innovators of, or the discoverers of perspective, Brunelleschi and so on, but not Turner. His paintings are, well, you know, visually in perspectival terms, they might be correct, but it's not the correctness that truly matters, but the atmosphere. Again, the atmosphere of his paintings is this fog, this mysteriousness, you know, this, you don't see things clearly. And strangely, the perspective and the teaching of perspective and the studying of perspective and the practicing of linear perspective, they are all about control, you know, and clarity. That's why you do a perspectival drawing, to see clearly. It's about clarity. But the paintings of Turner are anything but clear. Look at this. You know, so indeed, contrary nature, as it was described, as he was described on Wikipedia. I think some of his works are very beautiful, very romantic indeed, very lyrical, and very, very unclear. If by clarity you mean to see clearly. He loved the unclear, he loved the undecided. And that's why I thought of talking about atmospheric architecture. So again, this is William Turner, born in 1775 on the 23rd of April. Great painter. And I'm sure he painted his soul. The, you know, the scenes, they are just, you know, again, circumstantial. In a way, it's, he saw the world with the eye of eternity, you know, because indeed in the flowing of time, you know, even the most, you know, remarkable events become remote and almost insignificant. The land, the water, be it a lake or an ocean or a sea, and then the sky, and then you know, the human silhouettes and the inventions like a train and the ship, they are really, again, circumstantial. A major artist, and I understand why John Ruskin, truly a formidable intellect and critic and humanist, he advocated the cause of William Turner. So I hope now you see the legitimacy of thinking of atmosphere by the way of William Turner, because indeed there is a lot of atmosphere in his paintings. Now I would like to read for you and with you a few thoughts, very deep thoughts, in my opinion, of Mies van der Rohe, from a small manifesto he wrote. And by the way of manifesto, I would encourage you to envision and to write manifestos yourselves if you are inspired. You know, just a few words to externalize your imagining about architecture or about what means to make architecture, because I think it's important to express as honestly as possible what we feel and think about architecture. But let's read what this very important modern architect wrote. He wrote several, he was not a very prolific writer, no, but with a few words, I think he expressed some very deep thoughts about architecture. And I chose a few lines from a text he wrote, and I will read it to you. Form as a goal always ends in formalism. For this striving is not directed towards an inside, but towards an outside. I think he puts it very, very clearly. Form is indeed is not a goal. It is just a means towards something higher. And if you only use form as a goal, you end up, as he said, in formalism, which is not a good thing. And also what he said afterwards, that it has to be directed towards an inside. The inside is the one that generates a project. You start from the inside, you start from life, and life is inside, and then it receives a body, so to speak, a form outside. As he added, but only a living inside has a living outside. Well, in essence, I think he wants to say that when you do a project, when you do an architectural work, and not just architectural, but now we talk about architecture, you start from your inside, from your soul, from your mind, and apply to architecture. You try to, it's difficult actually to explain. I am trying to explain maybe the unexplainable. It's difficult. The idea is not to impose on a theme, architectural theme, a predetermined form. It has to be born from the inside out, from the reality of the essence of what you want to do, which is the inside. And the inside matters. That's where the essence even of a human being is. It's not the appearance. We have this saying in Romania, brânză bună în burduf de câine. Well, the appearance could be disappointing, but the essence is inside. What is good is inside, not the package. I know that we live at a time that values a lot appearance, the package. If the package is brilliant, we think that what is inside is equally brilliant. Often it's not the case. So he continues, only intensity of life has intensity of form. Every how is carried by a what. So he seems to say that the important question is what, and then follows how, because that's what he says. Every how is carried by a what. So when you start a project, you don't start with how, but you start with what. What do I do? Not how do I do it. That is the next question. How do I do it? The most important, the beginning of the project is what? What do I do? Now follows, I think, the most important part of what Ms. van der Rohe said. And this is the connection with the subject of this presentation, the atmosphere or atmospheric architecture. The uninformed is not worse than the overformed. I think there is missing an N. Now I notice after the I. It should be it's not the uniformed. It's no, it should be unformed, not uninformed. The unformed is not worse than the overformed. That I should not be there. So what he says is that what is not yet formed, what doesn't yet have a form, is not worse than what has too much form. I think this is a very deep thought, and I think it's true. The former is nothing. The latter is mere appearance. As I just said, what has too much form is mere appearance, and it's not valuable actually. it's like publicity today. There is a lot of publicity, a lot of scandalous publicity, but behind it, many times there is very little. There is very little content. So again, the unformed is not worse. I actually think that I typed this. I typed wrongly. Please forgive me. Eliminate the I. The unformed is not worse than the overformed. They are both bad. What is not sufficiently formed is as bad as what is too much formed. The former is nothing, the latter is mere appearance. Real form presupposes real life, but not something that has already existed, nor something sought out. What does he want to say with the last line? But not something that has already existed, nor something sought out. But just before this, he said real form presupposes real life. And I think he's right. When you do a project, you start from real life. Now, these are two words, but exactly what they mean, it's not so easy to say. But the form has to be born from that real life that you are trying to address. But that real life is not, as he said, something that already existed, nor something that just is born from your brain, something thought out. You have to start from the essence of that lived real life. I know these are words, and sometimes words are not always able to convey, especially deeper meanings. But in essence, I think he said it all when he said, when something is not sufficiently formed, is as bad as when something is excessively formed. And today we are going to address the unformed, the atmospheric, where the form almost disappears, like in the paintings of Turner. Let's see how architecture could assume this rather difficult domain of the unformed. I begin showing the work of Su Fujimoto, the Japanese architect. In fact, I'm going to show 3 Japanese architects, and maybe we should ask ourselves, why are the Japanese relevant to this subject? I hope I can suggest a possible answer. Let's see the Serpentine Gallery in London that he built, I think, around 10 years ago, Su Fujimoto. You see, it's almost like a cloud. It's almost unformed, but it was actually formed from grids, rigorous grids. But he was able, unfortunately, I forgot to add a sketch, a preliminary sketch he did for this pavilion, where you could almost see some kind of a geometrized cloud, if you can imagine something like this. And it almost looks, under certain conditions of light, very atmospheric, cloud-like. Su Fujimoto in London. But you see, when you come closer, you see it's actually very rigorous. It's based on a grid, on little cubes, and only from far away, it dissolves. It gives the appearance of being unformed. This is one of the of the mysteries of art, in a way, because I think the big problem is to marry the spirit of geometry, like we have here, squares and cubes, with the spirit of fineness, as a French theoretician of culture put it, l'esprit de géométrie and l'esprit de finesse, the spirit of geometry and the spirit of fineness. Well, fineness is exactly like the clouds and the seas, the atmospheres in the paintings of William Turner. And how to create a balance between the two is not easy, because you have to be precise and lacking precision at the same time, to be formed and unformed. That's why I read that short text from Miss van der Rohe, because it's very relevant to the theme, atmospheric architecture. Architecture operates within the field of the measurable, the precise, the geometric, the crystallized, the configured, the formed. But even Louis Kahn was right when he said a great building starts with the immeasurable and then goes through the measurable in the design process, and then in the end returns into the immeasurable or the unmeasurable. Well, the unmeasurable is in a way the unformed, but to go through form and arrive at unformed is not easy. But it's possible and even highly desirable if you want to do a building that is, transcending, the measurableness, meaning, limits. In essence, any great artist and any great architect is searching for the absolute, for the infinite, for the immeasurable. This was a way that Su Fujimoto found appropriate for this particular project. I'm not sure he completely achieved it, but under certain conditions of light, under certain atmospheric conditions, his building does dissolve, does become free and not constrained within, measurable and precise and crystallized limits or configurations. It's an interesting work by Su Fujimoto. We are going to see a few other works. As I said, this will not be a very extensive presentation, but I hope to provoke you to think about these matters, the unformed and the formed, the tension between the two, the necessity to have both, and atmospheric or the atmosphere in architecture could count. So Su Fujimoto in London, the Serpentine Pavilion. As you know, every year the Serpentine Gallery invites an important architect to build a pavilion. Look here, it's almost, you almost don't see any longer the geometry that made this structure possible. It almost becomes part of the sky, just like in the paintings of Turner, William Turner. You see a few silhouettes there, you recognize a few chairs, but as a whole, this is not a building that asserts its physiology and its identity in aggressive terms. It almost dissolves, it almost disappears. It's almost evanescent. Although it is based, as you can see, on the cube. And it can actually be used. People can sit on it, can step on it. It could function as a stair. Fujimoto has a whole theory about this. He was searching for in-betweenness, and indeed we have here an in-betweenness. The in-betweenness that you can find, maybe at equal distance from the formed and the unformed. Now you see the human presence is very well configured, but now it's also because of the focus, the focus of the photographer. The focus was on the human silhouette. The building is not very well defined, but even if it was the focus on both, the building would have appeared to be blurred, just like the Blur building by Diller and Scofidio. Elizabeth Diller and Riccardo Scofidio built this building in Switzerland, and we are going to read about it. I myself do not master very well the technical, intricacies of this project, but maybe you will. The Blur is an installation designed for the Swiss Expo 2002 on Lake Neuchâtel. It is an architecture of atmosphere, an ephemeral, non-built construction that interacts with the users and the context, investigating the concept of evanescence. The pavilion was characterized by 31, I don't know what that is, 500 high-pressure nozzles pumping the water from the lake to create a big cloud. Well, in a way, even the pavilion by Su Fujimoto that we saw was aspiring to become a cloud, geometrized as it was, but the aspiration was towards being cloud-like. A smart weather system was able to read the shifting climatic conditions of temperature, humidity, wind speed, and direction, processing the data and modulating the cloud shape. This is what this person wrote, Matteo Silverio, who, I don't know, runs a workshop in Barcelona at the experimental architecture school there. Here is what Diller and Scofidio wrote, the authors of the project. Upon entering the fog mass, visual and acoustic references are erased, leaving only an optical whiteout and the white noise of pulsing nozzles. Blur is an anti-spectacle, contrary to immersive environments that strive for high definition visual fidelity with ever greater technical virtuosity. Blur is decidedly low definition. There is nothing to see but our dependence on vision itself. Well, this is only partly true, because actually the building is very much a spectacle. Although they state here Blur is an anti-spectacle, but an anti-spectacle is still a spectacle, and maybe even more so. But what they say actually is that they try to build a building, and it was built, that in a way is an anti-building that disappears. That's why the reference to evanescence. And it becomes literally a cloud, a fog. This building was I will show the pictures after this. This building was a sensorial experience. In fact, within the cloud, the public could feel and drink the architecture in a media installation that involved all the human senses. Moreover, the pavilion tried to interact with the users, establishing new relations between compatible users thanks to the brain codes, as they call them, that visitors were supposed to wear. Indeed, before entering to the pavilion, visitors were invited to fill a questionnaire about their character profiles. Then in the brain codes were loaded the personal character data. Therefore, the codes were used as a protection from the wet environment, as well as personality data storage, communicating with the cloud's computer network and using tracking location technologies. Each visitor's position could be identified and the character profiles compared each other. When visitors passed one another, their codes could change color, indicating the degree of attraction or repulsion. Well, this was a game, actually, kind of a dating game there in the pavilion, where these brain codes, as they were called, would help, aleatory encounters, like chase encounters between two visitors. It was really a game. And in this respect, Diller and Scofidio sometimes, maybe in my opinion, went a little bit too far. It's very chic. It's very chic, but visually, and not just visually, experientially, the building they built in Switzerland is rather striking. well, we saw the paintings of Turner, and now we will look at a real building that is covered, engulfed in fog. This was generated by technology whose mysteries are unknown to me. But on these two bridges, people would go maybe for both sexes or something, because this was kind of like a dating game in a way in this pavilion, which was supposed to be anti-spectacle, but actually is very spectacle-like and even spectacular. Here it is at night. The structure is very formed, is a steel structure, metallic structure, very well designed and configured. But because through the mechanisms that were at work here, when the building would be engulfed in the fog, it would be like a cloud-like. Otherwise, here we have a building that is very much formed, and as such may be deficient in the vision of Miss van der Rohe. Fortunately, they have the fog that brings in that quantity or that quality of unformedness, if I am to use this word. This is the plan of the pavilion as it was built, and I hope I have more pictures with this. Especially, seen from far away, but not just from far away, approaching the pavilion engulfed in a cloud, a fog, was enticing and provocative. And yes, I was afraid of this. I don't have enough pictures, but you can imagine. And if you search on the web, I should have added more pictures, but I did this rather quickly. You can imagine that this structure was generating maybe at certain time, not continuously, this fog, and at its best, so to speak, was completely covered, engulfed by this fog. And I guess it's also a metaphor for the fog we are in when we are in love, because these people are very whimsical in a way, both Elizabeth Diller and Scofidio. So it's in a way, a metaphor for, the game of love. You have two bridges. I don't know if they were, one was for, women and the other one for men. Of course, you cannot do this easily today, because there are other possibilities, other permutations in the field of love. I don't know why they made two. Maybe one is for interest and one for exit or something. You can find. I am really unhappy that I didn't include more pictures, because I think I postponed and then I forgot to add more pictures of this pavilion, but it deserves to be seen with more pictures, because it is spectacular, even if they wanted to do an anti-spectacle work. Actually, it's highly, it's very much a spectacle and spectacular. Now I'll show another work by another important architect, Kazuyo Seijima, and her partner, Sana. The Louvre Museum in Mans in France, which is very atmospheric. And although the building, I hope I have a picture here seen from above, there are very slight curvatures, but otherwise the building is it's almost it's not really Cartesian because of slight curvatures of the walls. But what creates the mystery, what creates the poetic quality of the building, exactly this atmospheric quality. You look at the facades of the building, the stringency of geometry disappears, and it's just this fog-like, mist-like, which is mysterious, you see it almost disappears, although the building is very well configured geometrically. I mean, these are large rooms for the Louvre, where artworks are displayed and so on. I love very much the landscape around the building because it's left in this state. You know, I think it's very poetical, the landscaping. I find it strikingly, you know, original and beautiful. I don't know if the landscape designer was Japanese too, or Sejima and her partner also did the landscaping. But you see you know, we have three registers of visuality, if I am to call them so. The ground floor with what you see there, then the building, which is very finely, you know, crystallized as a building, but becomes mysterious because of the material used for these panels, and then the sky, clouded as it is. So, you know, I think it's very poetical. You have a discrete geometry, which, if the material for the elevations was not so properly chosen, would have been, I mean, you can imagine yourself if these panels were not like this, would have been, you know, just a regular, you know, almost rectangular building. But this fogginess that results from the materials they used creates this atmosphere. And that's the reason why I chose to present this work as well. You know, in relation to this subject, atmospheric architecture. And I think you understand very well, you know, the relationship between what we look at and the paintings of William Turner. Although this is architecture, not painting. But look at the landscape, abstract as it is, and I find it very, very well done and well chosen, and rather, yeah, unexpected. It's original, and it's also it is artificial somehow, but and decorative, but because of the aleatory, the irregularities of the lines that were used, I think they complement very well the building itself. The building, you see, when you don't see the reflections, you understand it's a, you know, a prism, a modernistic prism, like you see here, but very well chosen where the panels that cover the facade of the building, sometimes totally, other times partially, like here. And, you know, it's almost like the cloud descends into the building and becomes the building. I think it's a good work by Sana, by Kazuyo Sejima, and unfortunately, I never memorized the name of her partner, but they work together. And, you know, Kazuyo Sejima also received the Pritzker Prize, and it's a good work. And here we see William Turner. Here we see Kazuyo Sejima and her partner, and here, I don't know who did the landscape. Here is not so spectacular or so poetic, but here it is. I think it is. It's very unusual, this kind of you know, landscape, which shows the presence of the human imagination and hand and choice, but it has an otherness about it. It's yeah, it's other, you know, it's different. Good work by Sana. The problem with geometry, I mean, there is no problem with geometry, but because I think a good building, a great building, let's hope a great building aspires towards the immeasurable or the unmeasurable, geometry, you know, doesn't handle well unmeasurableness or immeasurableness. You know, you in the design process, you work with numbers, with measures, you measure. So how to arrive at the infinite, at the absolute, at the immeasurable, through the measurable. But this is the big challenge of architecture. Fujimoto tried in his way, Kazuya Sejima tried in her way, and now we arrive at the third Japanese architect, Junya Ishigami, who initially I wanted to show a different work by him. He did for the Venice Biennial, when he actually received the Golden Lion, he did a work which was actually unseen. It was so thin, he used a wire, he structured the space in an almost unseeable way. And the funny thing is that it was unseeable even by a cat. A cat entered the pavilion at the Venice Biennial and apparently ruined the whole unseeable structure by Ishigami, hitting it with the tail or something. That's what I read. And actually, on the day of the opening of the Venice Biennial, Ishigami was still in the process of rebuilding what he did and what the cat destroyed. Now that, you know, like you remember when Miss van der Rohe said the unformed is nothing. Ishigami was trying through some kind of a, you know, very discreet, unseeable structure, almost unseeable, to arrive exactly at that unformedness, the appearance of unformedness, but through form. Between form and unformed is a relationship, and there should be a relationship between the measurable and the unmeasurable or the immeasurable. Now here I show, actually, I don't show that work, and now I regret I don't, but you can find it on the web. Just type in Ishigami and maybe the word cat or the word on Google Images or unseen structure or something. Here I'll just show some works where they are not really fog-like or cloud-like, but in the tension between nature and the grid, white as it is and thin, you might see a certain blurring. You know, you don't know any longer. Are you inside the building? Are you outside the building? Where is the building? So essentially, the atmosphere results from blurring. The frontier between the measured and the unmeasured, the formed and the unformed is blurred. And blurring, even here, this is an important building he built for a university in Japan. You know, you're not quite sure, you know, where you are. You know, there are reflections, there are plants. Yes, you recognize the table and the chairs, but otherwise there is an ambiguity. And this ambiguity is exactly the atmosphere of the building that results from the uneasy meeting between the unformed and the formed. Here too, you know, yes, you guess that the white things belong to architecture and the plants belong to themselves, and you have this blurred, you know, distinction, and well, maybe not so much distinction, the blurred frontier between nature and man, between the building and nature, and this is where the atmosphere springs from. And it's the same in the paintings of William Turner, that you have the ship or you have the train as you know, products of human work and invention and creation, and then you have nature, immense as it is, and you have the two. You have the immensity of nature, and you have the you know, the limited presence and even limiting of man's work, and they are together. Is man and nature. Here also we have man and nature in a different way. Or here, you know, also from the work of Ishigami, where is the building? Where is nature? You can't tell. easily. Now, maybe if you visited, the pavilion or whatever he built there it would have been perhaps easier because you had the chance to assess, to evaluate in 3 dimensions, even 4, considering time. Here we only have 2 dimensions, but it's mysterious enough, this meeting between the immeasurableness of nature and the measurableness of man's work. And I truly think if we can achieve this atmosphere born from 2 entities which complement each other, the freedom, the unmeasurableness of nature, and the more limited presence and limiting of man's work, be it a room, be it a pavilion, be it a museum, or being a pavilion for Serpentine Gallery. In essence, it's about the atmosphere derives exactly from bringing in the limitlessness of nature in this case, or in other cases but it's still about nature, because Su Fujimoto aspired towards creating a pavilion cloud-like, and Sejima and her partner, they try to dissolve the Louvre Museum in Mons. They try to make it evanescent, just like the pavilion in the Lake Neuchâtel on the Lake Neuchâtel by Diller and Scofidio. Here we see a little better the configuration of the rooms, if we are to call them so, or the pavilions built by Ishigami. But in other instances, it was less clear. Even here, some approximations perhaps are not so easy to arrive at. So again, it is about blurring, is about the atmosphere that you arrive at in the tension between 2 realities or 2 entities. In essence, between those 2 terms in that short text by Mies, the unformed on one hand, and the formed, or even the overformed on the other. In all these works, we can talk actually about in-betweenness. And in-betweenness very often is a major aspiration for important architects. You can read this word, you can find this word in the text of Peter Eisenman, in the statements of Su Fujimoto. They all search for this in-betweenness, because this in-betweenness is actually expressing best, I think, this difficult equilibrium between, necessity and freedom. Now, Philippe Ram is an interesting architect. Unfortunately, I don't know him very well. I know of him. I will read a few things about him, about a project, a park he built in China, where he also worked in an atmospheric way. He is one who promotes a meteorological architecture. Yes, a meteorological architecture. Building with heat, humidity, and light. The Jade Eco Park in Taichung, actually not in China, in Taiwan. Building with heat, humidity, and light. Not so much with typical forms that an architect works with. Let's read a little bit about him, about this project. What happens when liquid processes as slippery and elusive as what happens? It's a question. What happens when liquid processes as slippery and elusive as condensation or evaporation are expressed in human thought and, even more incongruously, in built form. The equations and diagrams of physics take on habitable scale at Jade Eco Park, a 68-hectare lot in the heart of the rapidly growing Taiwanese city of Taichung. An international competition to design this space was held in late 2011, with the winning team being composed of Philippe Ram architects, Mosbach paysagists, and Ricky Louis associates. The project is under construction and scheduled to open in July. Well, this happened already, but the text I found is, prior to finalizing the project. The proposal took many by surprise. It contained not a single naturalistic perspective drawing. Even where there are renderings, they are more akin to energy charts. Human figures are few, and when they do appear, they look more like heat bags with red dots indicating the energy their heartbeats generate. There are, like in the brain codes of Diller and Scofidio, there are no traces of fashionable forms, only a series of analytical and strategic diagrams. This style of presentation persists through various phases of the project's development. This is the site plan, and it looks quite interesting, doesn't it? I mean, even if the text before, appear to say that, there are no forms, there are just diagrams. But here I do look at form, and actually very enticing form, very interesting forms, organic, unexpected. And because they were actually generated not by a quest for form, the way Mies talked about, that over-formed, but based on, those processes that I read about, having to do more with, climate and meteorology, and biology and physics and chemistry and so on. I don't know enough about this. I'm willing to search further, but I invite you, those of you who are here now, to investigate the works of Philippe Ram, because he shows an interesting way to do architecture, one that is very unusual, because we are accustomed to just draw plans and, erect vertical walls, or if not so vertical, steel walls. Here he is working with something else. And he is also generating fog and the unclearness of atmosphere. I hope I have here an image. That's him actually with the fog he generated with some equipment, because he works with atmospheric elements. In most of these works, you see at the top a little bit of the, the ducts, the pipes that they create, the effects, the atmosphere that he wants to arrive at. Just like the project by Diller and Scofidio, and maybe a little bit less in the case of Sejima and her partner Su Fujimoto. So, without the fog, these are the pipes that generate the fog and the trees around. An unusual park, isn't it? And that's because he works with other entities, other elements, not those typically used by architects and relevant to architecture. Here we see the pipes that generate the atmosphere in a way that he desired. I don't know enough about this project, but again, I invite, if you are interested, to study further on the web. Philippe Ram Park in Taiwan. It's an architecture for the senses, not for the eye, or not only for the eye. This is very important. because there are five senses. It's not just one. It's not just seeing. And in fact, the atmosphere is relevant exactly because of it, that questions the supremacy of its majesty, the eye. Most of the works by architects are done for the eye, and we forget the other senses, you know, to touch it, to smell it, to feel it, to hear it. Even hearing, like in the project by Diller and Scofidio, hearing was important because you've heard the production of that fog coming from those nozzles. So again, life and existence benefits not just from the presence and the activity of the voracious eye. I don't know if you know, but so-called primitive people consider the eye being rather, the devil's organ. The eye is very, in a way, demanding and egocentric, you know, and we neglect the other feelings, the other sorry, not feelings, the other senses, you know. So reality is not just about visuality. That's why sometimes I criticize an excessive concern with visualizations. Of course, the eye, you know, matters. It does. But when it matters too much, the risk is at arriving at that overformed that Miss van der Rohe mentioned in the text I read. So it's very easy to arrive at a superficial architecture if you only consider what the eye sees. And if you make an architecture only for the eye, there is a good chance you don't create a truly great architecture. That's why the atmosphere is important, because the atmosphere softens the frontier between the seen and the unseen. And you arrive at the importance of the feeling, you know, and the visualization sometimes, you know, seduces in a superficial way. You know, like, let's say, Miss America, you know, we see there so-called beautiful women, but they are manipulated by the media, or not just, you know, Miss America or Miss Universe or whatever. This obsession with the visual, with the eye, you know, we do live at a time when we are trapped almost by visualizations. It's all about the appearance, the skin, you know, the more scandalous and the more seductive, the better. But how much truth is behind that appearance? So a culture of appearances is most surely seductive, but superficial. So the atmosphere is important. I remember Buckminster Fuller saying, you know, the problem with environmentalists and environmentalism is that, you know, we call the environment everything that is outside of us without us, while the cosmos is everything outside of us plus us. And the atmosphere does exactly this. The atmosphere, let's say the atmosphere that a building creates, both inside and outside, connects the building with what we call the environment. So it's not alone, it's not trapped in its own individuality. Doesn't matter how beautiful, it connects. It's about connecting. And I remember two words which were used as a motto by an important art historian and critic, a friend of Louis Kahn, when he wrote about Louis Kahn. I'm talking about Vincent Scully. Vincent Scully used a quotation from a British writer, Forster, just two words, as a motto to an essay on his friend, Louis Kahn. And these two words are only connect. only connect. And this is what atmosphere does. Atmosphere connects with what is outside of the geometric prism, what is outside of the building. It connects with the world at large. And, you know, connecting is indeed hugely important. In fact, the oldest definition of art I found, translated into English, but from a Proto-Indo-European language, this is the oldest definition of art. Art equals bridge equals God. Bridge meaning connecting, no? Is about connection. This is what art, good art does. It connects, and good architecture does the same thing. It connects. So here is, yeah, I'll show another picture. We are very close to ending this presentation. Werner Panton's Visiona 2 exhibition in 1970, the show, which was located in a boat docked on the Rhine, collapsed essential spatial differentiations, such as that between the wall and the floor, to create spaces that would envelop the inhabitant. I included this image because it's about that blurring. So the atmosphere of this interior is the result of blurring the distinction between wall, floor, and so on. And we talked about blurring, and we talked about the atmosphere that results from blurring, and essentially is about blurring the frontier between the formed and the unformed. And I will end by reading just a few words of this interesting PhD student at the Virginia School of Architecture in the United States. I found today this text by her, Revisiting Atmosphere in Architecture. The modernist tradition has bequeathed us a narrow definition of air in inhabited space. Because yes, when we talk about atmosphere, we almost unavoidably think of air. In The Radiant City from 1933, Le Corbusier formulated the ideal of exact air as a specific mixture of gases or at optimal temperature and humidity. In contrast, in the aesthetics of atmospheres, this person, Gernot Böhme, argues that atmosphere functions as an affective, sensual, and meaning-giving substance. The hermetically sealed Corbusian environment separates its inhabitants from the outside world and desensualizes them, amputating the embodied perception of atmosphere that Böhme describes. Architecture as an expressive language, one that creates a sense of belonging and speaks to the observer with a sense of affect, is often lacking in today's discourses. I would argue, the person who wrote this text, I would argue that contemporary architects must strive to reconceptualize the idea of air and atmosphere as more than simply a germ-free, comfortable medium, and instead make it a vital, inspiring facet of living spaces, one with meaning and spirit. It's not an accident that she uses these two words, meaning and spirit. In pre-industrial architecture, such as the Renaissance Villa Eolia in Veneto, Italy, and I regret I don't have pictures of it here, no strict separation was made between air and atmosphere. The pneumatic architecture of this period understood air as an animated spirit, again, spirit, that could create a positive presence within a building and that explicitly promoted, again, spirited well-being. As the architectural historian Barbara Kenda explains, spirit or spiritus in this context refers to the interconnected notions of air, breath, and spirit, all terms that have their origin in the Greek pneuma, variously defined as to blow, breathe, or wind. Pneuma is simultaneously material and immaterial. You see, again, it's about duality, material and immaterial, measurable and unmeasurable, formed and unformed. The ancient view of air as pneuma and or ether thus made it cognate and contiguous with atmosphere, a life-giving inspirational medium to which we are elementally connected. The spiritual dimension, spiritual, of air as atmosphere is also embraced in more recent architecture, such as the San Paolo Church. Then this work, this mosque by an interesting woman architect in Bangladesh. I forgot her name, unfortunately, but the mosque is an excellent work, and I have a presentation on her. And the Shadow House. In this building, I should have had pictures, and I apologize, I don't. In these buildings, atmosphere stimulates multi-sensorial responses to space through the use of light and shadow, along with plentiful air. These poetic constructions employ simple elemental substances, air, brick, light, wood, concrete, to create spaces that produce moments of sensorial reflection and promote well-being as an attuned state. In essence, what you wanted to say is that a good building should address the atmosphere and transcend the egocentrism of the eye and just the eye and visualizations. That's why she used the word spirit quite often, because the atmosphere dilutes the both geometry and the obsession with the visual. And I end this presentation. This is the website I took. These last 3 pages, or these last 3 slides with a text from this researcher and architect as well from the United States. If you are interested to, she has a more extensive text there, and also pictures of those buildings that she mentioned, and which unfortunately I do not show. So thank you very much. This was it. This was all for today about this subject, atmospheric architecture.
Mulțumim mult, a fost